Have you ever felt that the Bible doesn't tell the whole story? Hidden away for centuries, there are ancient texts, banned, forgotten, or simply excluded, that reveal shocking secrets about biblical events, characters, and prophecies. These lost books hold vital pieces of the puzzle, filling in the gaps that the Bible leaves behind. But why were these books banned? And what truths were deemed too dangerous or controversial for the Church to include? From the miraculous birth of Noah to the supernatural powers of Moses, these writings contain hidden knowledge that will help you unravel the mysteries that are presented in the Bible. And in some cases, these writings even challenge the biblical narrative. They expose the cosmic battles between angels and demons, offer vivid details of heaven and hell, and shed light on the early lives of key biblical figures like Abraham, Enoch, and Melchizedek, stories you won't find in the Bible. Many believe that the Church deliberately left these books out because they threaten to shake the foundations of traditional Christian teachings. Whether it's the origins of Satan's rebellion, the real reason for the Great Flood, or the prophecies of the Apocalypse, these lost texts reveal a world far stranger and more complex than we've been told. In this series, we will uncover these hidden stories and explore the ancient writings that were left out of the Bible. They hold the key to understanding the bigger picture, giving you the complete story that has been hidden for thousands of years. The first text we will look at comes from the Book of Enoch in the Apocalypse of Moses. In this text, the story of Moses' birth is dramatically different from the traditional biblical account found in Exodus. Moses is born with extraordinary powers, hinting at a supernatural origin that sets him apart from the very beginning. When Moses is born, his appearance is otherworldly. His body glows with light, and his eyes radiate a brightness so intense that it illuminates the entire house. This supernatural glow is seen as a divine sign, indicating that Moses is destined for a great and powerful mission. His father, Amram, is filled with fear and awe at the sight of his newborn son. He believes that Moses may be of divine or angelic origin rather than just a mere mortal. Pharaoh's advisors, upon hearing about the extraordinary birth, immediately suspect that this child will grow to be a great leader who might overthrow the Egyptian rule. This mirrors the story of the Magi who foretell the coming of Jesus, but with the ominous implication that Moses is seen as a direct threat to the throne from birth. Moses' exceptional abilities, which include speaking with wisdom even as an infant, solidify his status as a chosen figure directly connected to divine power. In the traditional biblical account, Moses' birth is humble, with no mention of extraordinary powers or divine light. He is hidden by his family to protect him from Pharaoh's decree to kill all Hebrew male infants, and his destiny unfolds later in life through his encounter with the burning bush. However, in this non-canonical version, Moses is born with obvious signs of greatness, adding an almost messianic quality to his origin story, which contrasts with the biblical portrayal of his gradual rise to leadership. Moses' birth introduces themes of prophecy and divine intervention much earlier than in the biblical narrative. The description of Moses glowing with light hints at angelic or divine qualities, suggesting that he is not just a prophet or leader, but a being of supernatural origin from birth. The text offers an entirely different perspective on the nature of Moses' calling and destiny, portraying him as a figure whose greatness is recognized from the very moment of his birth. Number 2, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas is a non-canonical text that presents a very different version of Jesus' childhood, describing events that are absent from the canonical Gospels. Jesus as a child demonstrates extraordinary powers that often manifest in surprising and sometimes troubling ways. In the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, Jesus is depicted as a boy with incredible supernatural abilities. For instance, he molds clay birds and then brings them to life with a simple command. However, not all of his miracles are benign. In one instance, when a boy accidentally bumps into Jesus, he becomes angry and curses the boy, causing him to fall dead. When others complain about this, Jesus strikes them blind. These early displays of divine power are not only miraculous, but also occasionally destructive. The text portrays young Jesus as both a healer and a figure who can be dangerously wrathful, a stark contrast to the traditional image of a gentle and compassionate Messiah. Eventually, Jesus' powers become more controlled, and he heals those whom he has harmed. But the portrayal of a youthful Jesus who struggles with his abilities is strikingly different from the traditional biblical narrative. In the canonical Gospels, very little is said about Jesus' childhood, and there are no stories of him performing miracles until his public ministry begins. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas, however, depicts Jesus as fully aware of his divine powers at a very young age, sometimes even using them in ways that cause harm. This portrayal of a young Jesus learning to wield his divine authority is completely absent from the New Testament. The idea of Jesus as a child with unchecked power, capable of both life-giving and destructive miracles, introduces the concept of a young Savior learning responsibility over his abilities. This is a sharp contrast to the canonical image of Jesus as a fully realized figure of divine love and mercy. Number 3, the Ascension of Isaiah is an early Christian apocalyptic text that describes the prophet Isaiah's visions of heaven and the future coming of Christ. One unique and grim story in this text is the martyrdom of Isaiah. According to the text, Isaiah is martyred during the reign of King Manasseh, a wicked ruler that is heavily influenced by demonic forces. Isaiah's crime is prophesying the downfall of Manasseh's rule and the coming of the Messiah. The king is enraged by Isaiah's prophecies and orders his execution. Isaiah's death is particularly brutal. He is sawed in half by Manasseh's men, an execution that is carried out in front of his followers. As the saw cuts through Isaiah's body, he remains silent and does not cry out. Instead, he maintains a sense of peace and divine acceptance, knowing that he would soon be taken to the heavens. While the canonical Bible mentions King Manasseh's evil reign, it does not detail the martyrdom of Isaiah. The Ascension of Isaiah presents a narrative in which the prophet not only proclaims the coming of Christ but also suffers a violent death for his faith, adding a new dimension to Isaiah's role in early Christian thought. This version of Isaiah's death portrays him as a Christ-like figure who suffers martyrdom for prophesying the coming of the Messiah. It foreshadows the suffering of Christ and adds a layer of early Christian martyrdom themes to the story of the Hebrew prophet. Number 4, the Book of Jubilees is a Jewish text that expands on stories found in Genesis, providing a more detailed account of creation, the patriarchs, and the early history of the world. One notable divergence from the Bible is its version of the creation of Adam and Eve. In the Book of Jubilees, the creation of Adam and Eve takes place over a longer period than in the Bible. Adam is created first, but Eve does not appear immediately. Instead, there is a delay, and during this time, Adam is left alone in the Garden of Eden. He names all the animals and tends to the garden by himself for a number of weeks, growing increasingly lonely. It is only later in the 6th week that Eve is created to be Adam's companion. The text goes on to describe how the angels watched over Adam during his time alone and how they were concerned for him, pleading with God to give him a companion. This version of creation emphasizes the loneliness of Adam and the importance of companionship as part of the divine plan. In the Genesis account, Eve is created relatively soon after Adam without any indication that he spent an extended time alone. The Book of Jubilees adds this element of loneliness and portrays the creation of Eve as an act of mercy, prompted by the pleas of the angels, which is not found in the canonical narrative. The emphasis on Adam's loneliness and the involvement of angels in pleading for Eve's creation adds a more human dimension to the creation story. It suggests that Adam's need for companionship was a central part of the divine plan and not just simply an afterthought. Number 5, the second book of Enoch, an Old Testament apocryphal text, gives a unique and expanded version of the figure of Melchizedek, a mysterious priest king who appears briefly in the Bible. In 2 Enoch, Melchizedek's origins and significance are explored in detail, offering a different perspective on his divine role. Melchizedek is presented as having a miraculous birth. His mother, Sophonim, dies in childbirth, but Melchizedek is born fully formed, already speaking and physically marked with the seal of the priesthood. This miraculous birth signifies that Melchizedek is destined for a unique role in God's divine plan. The angel Michael takes the infant Melchizedek to paradise, where he is protected from the destruction of the earth by the flood. While the Bible mentions Melchizedek only briefly as a priest of God who blesses Abraham, 2 Enoch elevates his role, portraying him as an eternal priest appointed before the time of Abraham and connected directly to the divine. The biblical account of Melchizedek in Genesis is brief and mysterious, leaving much about his origins unclear. In contrast, 2 Enoch provides an elaborate backstory, presenting him as a figure with supernatural origins and divine protection, which elevates his importance far beyond what is stated in the Bible. This version of Melchizedek's story portrays him as a priest with divine authority, appointed before the flood and set apart for a special role in human history. On number 6, the Book of Jubilees expands on many biblical stories, including the narrative of Cain and Abel. While the Bible describes Cain being marked by God and wandering the earth after killing his brother, the Book of Jubilees offers a more detailed account of Cain's fate. After Cain kills Abel, the Book of Jubilees adds that Cain is filled with immense sorrow and regret. He flees to the east, where he builds a city, but he lives in constant fear of divine retribution. Eventually, Cain is killed by his own house collapsing on him during an earthquake, a fate that seems to be divine punishment for his crime. This differs from the traditional biblical story, where Cain is merely marked by God and left to wander the earth. The Book of Jubilees emphasizes that God's judgment eventually catches up with Cain, resulting in his untimely death. In the Bible, Cain's fate after the murder of Abel is more ambiguous. He is marked by God to protect him from being killed, and the Bible does not describe his ultimate fate. The Book of Jubilees fills in this gap by providing a detailed account of Cain's later life and his eventual death, tying it directly to his sin. This version of Cain's story offers closure to the narrative by showing that divine justice eventually catches up with him. The story portrays a more definitive judgment on Cain's actions, linking his death to the murder of Abel and providing a more complete moral arc. Number 7. The life of Adam and Eve is an ancient Jewish and Christian text that expands upon the biblical story of Adam and Eve. One of the most interesting parts of this text is its description of Satan's rebellion and fall from heaven, which is not detailed in the Bible. According to the life of Adam and Eve, Satan's fall was the result of his refusal to bow before Adam, whom God had created in his own image. God commands all the angels to honor Adam, but Satan, out of pride and jealousy, refuses. This rebellion leads to his expulsion from heaven. Enraged, Satan seeks to corrupt God's new creation, leading him to tempt Eve in the Garden of Eden. This account provides a clear motivation for Satan's actions in tempting humanity and ties his rebellion to the creation of mankind, something not mentioned in the Bible. The Bible mentions the serpent tempting Eve in the Garden of Eden, but does not explicitly connect this event to Satan's rebellion or fall from heaven. The life of Adam and Eve provides a backstory for Satan's actions, linking his pride and refusal to honor Adam with his later role as tempter and corrupter. This story offers a more comprehensive explanation for the origin of evil, connecting Satan's fall with his jealousy of humanity. It adds depth to the character of Satan, showing his motivations and providing a clear cause for his enmity toward God and mankind. Number 8. The Cave of Treasures is a Syriac Christian text that expands upon the stories of Adam, Eve, and their descendants. It provides additional details about the early generations of humanity. One of the most striking differences is the description of Abel's death and its aftermath, which differs from the brief account in the Bible. In the Cave of Treasures, after Cain kills Abel, Adam and Eve are filled with immense grief and sorrow. The text describes how Abel's body is kept in the Cave of Treasures, the same cave where Adam and Eve took refuge after being expelled from Eden. This cave becomes a sacred burial site for Abel, and his body remains there until the time of the flood. Adam and Eve are said to visit Abel's body often, weeping and mourning over their lost son. Unlike the Bible's account, which moves quickly past Abel's death, the Cave of Treasures emphasizes the emotional toll this event takes on his parents, adding a new dimension to the story of grief and loss in the early days of humanity. In the Bible, Abel's death is mentioned briefly, and there is no description of what happens to his body or how his parents respond emotionally to his murder. The Cave of Treasures provides a more intimate look at the aftermath of Abel's death, focusing on the long-term grief experienced by Adam and Eve. This version of Abel's death highlights the deep sorrow and mourning of Adam and Eve, portraying the emotional impact of the first murder in human history. It adds a human element to the narrative, showing how the first family struggled with loss and death. Number 9. In a manner strikingly similar to certain non-canonical accounts of Moses' birth, the Book of Enoch, particularly in the Book of Noah section, provides a supernatural narrative of Noah's birth. Both Noah and Moses are depicted as being born with miraculous signs, indicating their special destinies from the moment they entered the world. Just like Moses, Noah is described in this text as having a glowing body from the moment of birth. His eyes shine with an extraordinary brightness that illuminates the house, and his hair is described as being white as snow. These supernatural traits cause immediate concern for Noah's father, Lamech, who fears that his son might be the offspring of the Watchers, the fallen angels who had been interacting with humans. In his anxiety, Lamech seeks advice from his father, Methuselah, who in turn consults the wise Enoch. Enoch reassures them that Noah is not the child of the Watchers, but is instead divinely chosen to survive the flood and fulfill God's plan to repopulate the earth. The Bible's account of Noah's birth in Genesis is straightforward and lacks any mention of supernatural signs. In this non-canonical version, Noah's glowing body and miraculous traits immediately set him apart as a figure of divine purpose, similar to the non-canonical versions of Moses' birth. This story emphasizes a recurring theme in ancient texts where important figures like Noah and Moses are marked by supernatural signs at birth, signifying their divine calling. Noah's glowing appearance and his father's fear of angelic parentage create an air of mystery and divine intervention, elevating Noah's role even before his mission to survive the flood begins. Number 10, the Book of Jubilees offers a detailed retelling of many stories from Genesis, including the story of the Tower of Babel. This version of the narrative expands on the motivations behind the building of the tower and the consequences of God's intervention. In the Book of Jubilees, the people who build the Tower of Babel are not just trying to reach the heavens out of pride, but they are specifically attempting to wage war against God. The text explains that the builders of the tower wanted to establish a direct path to heaven in order to overthrow the heavenly order and seize control of the divine realms. The tower is described as being far more massive and ambitious than in the biblical version, with the builders intending to create a stronghold that would allow them to challenge God's authority. God's response is equally severe. He does not just confuse their language, but also causes violent earthquakes that shatter the tower and scatter the people across the earth. In this version, the destruction of the tower is more catastrophic, and the builders are portrayed as far more rebellious. In the biblical account, the motivation for building the Tower of Babel is rooted in human pride and a desire to make a name for themselves. The Book of Jubilees goes further, suggesting that the builders intended to challenge God directly, making their actions far more blasphemous and their punishment far more severe. This retelling of the Tower of Babel story adds a deeper layer of conflict between humanity and the divine, portraying the builders as rebels against God's order. The catastrophic destruction of the tower emphasizes the futility of their efforts and the overwhelming power of divine judgment. Number 11, the Book of Jasher is an ancient text that retells and expands on many biblical stories, offering additional details and variations. One such story is the confession of Lamech, a figure whose actions lead to an unexpected twist in the fate of his ancestor, Cain. Lamech, a descendant of Cain, plays a pivotal role in the death of Cain. The story recounts how Lamech, in his old age, mistakenly causes the death of his ancestor while out hunting. Lamech, who has poor eyesight, is guided by a younger companion, and in a tragic accident, he misidentifies his target and inadvertently strikes Cain. When Lamech realizes what he has done, he is filled with grief, recognizing the heavy burden of his actions. The incident serves as a continuation of the curse on Cain, showing how his descendants continue to experience tragic consequences. The story offers a sense of closure to Cain's narrative, which remains unresolved in the biblical text. In the Bible, Cain's fate after his exile is left unclear. The Book of Jasher provides a different resolution by introducing Lamech's role in the accidental death of Cain, adding a new layer of complexity to the generational story of Cain's lineage. This story adds depth to the theme of generational consequences, with Lamech's tragic mistake illustrating how the shadow of Cain's actions continues to affect his descendants. It also highlights the unintended impact of violence and the sorrow that follows in its wake. Number 12, The Secrets of Enoch, also known as 2 Enoch, presents additional details about the life of Enoch, the seventh patriarch in the line of Adam. While the Bible briefly mentions that Enoch was taken by God, 2 Enoch provides a full account of his ascent through the heavens, which is absent from the Bible. Enoch is taken on a journey through multiple levels of heaven, where he witnesses both divine glory and the fate of the wicked. As he ascends through the 7 heavens, Enoch is shown vast celestial realms filled with angels and spirits. He learns about the cosmic order and receives divine knowledge about the future of humanity, including the coming judgment. One of the most striking elements is Enoch's encounter with the fallen angels who have been bound in darkness. These angels, once glorious, now exist in torment, awaiting their final punishment. Enoch is given a special role as a prophet who will pass down this divine knowledge to his descendants. In the Bible, Enoch is mentioned briefly in Genesis and praised for his righteousness, but no detailed account of his journey through the heavens is provided. To Enoch expands significantly on Enoch's story, presenting him as a pivotal figure who gains insight into divine mysteries and becomes an intermediary between God and humanity. This narrative elevates Enoch to a central role in understanding the divine plan for creation and judgment, portraying him as more than just a righteous man. It offers a more detailed cosmology with multiple levels of heaven and a focus on Enoch's role as a visionary. Number 13. The Apocalypse of Abraham is a Jewish apocalyptic text that details the life of Abraham before his calling by God. While the Bible introduces Abraham as an adult, this text provides a unique backstory, including his rejection of idol worship and the circumstances that led to his faith in the one true God. The Apocalypse of Abraham describes Abraham's early years, during which he grows up in a family of idol makers. Abraham begins to question the validity of idol worship, realizing that the idols his family creates cannot truly represent divine power. In one notable episode, Abraham destroys the idols in his father's workshop, which angers his family and the local community. This moment sets the stage for Abraham's journey toward monotheism. The text also details how Abraham receives divine visions, including an encounter with the angel Yahweh, who reveals to him the mysteries of the universe and the future destruction of the wicked. Abraham's spiritual awakening leads him to reject the false gods of his people and embrace a covenant with the one true God. In the Bible, Abraham's story begins when God calls him to leave his homeland. The Apocalypse of Abraham provides a rich backstory that shows Abraham's gradual rejection of idol worship and his internal struggle before receiving divine revelation. This narrative adds depth to Abraham's character, portraying him as a seeker of truth who undergoes a personal transformation before becoming the father of faith. His rejection of idols and his divine visions create a more dramatic and introspective journey toward his covenant with God. Number 14. The Testament of the 12 Patriarchs is a collection of the final words of the 12 sons of Jacob, each offering moral lessons and prophetic visions. In the Testament of Levi, the ancestor of the priestly line, receives a unique vision that differs from the biblical portrayal of his role. In this testament, Levi describes a vision in which he ascends to heaven and witnesses the heavenly temple. He sees the future of his descendants, who will serve as priests in the earthly temple, and receives instructions on how they are to uphold divine law. Levi is also shown a vision of the Messiah, who will come from his lineage and bring justice to the world. The vision includes a prophecy of the eventual corruption of the priesthood, with Levi's descendants turning away from God's commandments. This leads to a divine judgment in which the corrupt priests are replaced by a righteous priesthood that will serve under the coming Messiah. The Bible mentions Levi as one of Jacob's sons and the father of the priestly tribe, but it does not provide a detailed prophecy of the Messiah or the corruption of the priesthood. The Testament of Levi introduces a messianic prophecy and adds a heavenly dimension to Levi's role as the ancestor of the priesthood. This vision emphasizes the sacred role of the priesthood and the coming of the Messiah, linking Levi's descendants to a divine plan for justice and restoration. The prophecy of priestly corruption also adds a cautionary element, showing that even those chosen for sacred service are not immune to falling away from God. Number 15, 4 Ezra, also known as 2 Esdras, is a Jewish apocalyptic text that contains the visions of Ezra, a prophet who receives revelations about the end of the world, the fate of the wicked, and the future of Israel. This text is not included in the Hebrew Bible, but offers a dramatic and unique vision of the end times. In 4 Ezra, Ezra is shown a series of apocalyptic visions, including the destruction of the world and the final judgment. One of the most striking visions is of a massive eagle with 12 wings and 3 heads, representing the oppressive rulers of the earth. This eagle is destined to be destroyed by a lion, symbolizing the Messiah, who will bring justice and overthrow the corrupt kingdoms of the world. Ezra also receives revelations about the resurrection of the dead and the final judgment, where the righteous will be rewarded and the wicked will be cast into eternal torment. Throughout the text, Ezra questions God about the suffering of the righteous in the present world, and God provides explanations that emphasize the importance of faith and endurance until the end. While the Bible contains apocalyptic themes, for Ezra presents a unique vision with symbolic imagery such as the eagle and lion, which are not found in the canonical apocalyptic texts. The dialogue between Ezra and God also provides a deeper exploration of theodicy, or the question of why the righteous suffer. The vivid apocalyptic imagery and the discussion of divine justice make this text a powerful addition to the body of apocalyptic literature. The interaction between Ezra and God offers a profound meditation on the nature of suffering, faith, and the ultimate victory of righteousness. Number 16, The Life of Adam and Eve is a Jewish and Christian apocryphal text that expands on the early chapters of Genesis. One of the key differences in this text is the detailed account of the rebellion of Satan, which is not fully explained in the Bible. According to this text, after the creation of Adam, God commands all the angels to bow to him as the image of God. However, Satan refuses out of jealousy and pride, declaring that Adam should not be honored above the angels. This act of rebellion leads to Satan's expulsion from heaven, and in his rage, he vows to corrupt God's creation. This is the motivation for Satan's temptation of Eve, which leads to the fall of man. In this narrative, Satan's rebellion is not just a matter of defying God, but also stems from his refusal to recognize humanity's special status. This introduces a deeper reason for Satan's hostility toward mankind, tying the fall of angels directly to the fall of humanity. In the Bible, Satan's role in the fall of Adam and Eve is limited to his appearance as the serpent in the Garden of Eden, with no detailed explanation of his origin or motives. The life of Adam and Eve fills in these gaps by explaining the cause of Satan's rebellion and his desire to corrupt humanity. This narrative provides a clearer motive for Satan's actions, portraying his fall as directly related to humanity's creation. It adds a layer of cosmic conflict, showing how the rebellion of angels and the fall of man are interconnected events. Number 17, the Book of Jubilees offers an expanded account of the events described in Genesis, including a detailed story of the fallen angels and their interactions with humanity. This story adds new elements to the narrative of the Watchers, angels who descended to earth and took human wives. In this version, the Watchers are angels who descend to earth to observe humanity. However, they become enamored with human women and in their lust, take them as wives, producing a race of giants known as the Nephilim. These giants, being half angelic and half human, are depicted as violent and corrupt, spreading chaos and destruction across the earth. As a result of their actions, the Watchers are punished by God, who binds them in the depths of the earth until the final judgment. The Book of Jubilees goes further by describing how the presence of the Nephilim accelerates the moral decline of humanity, leading to the flood that wipes out all life except Noah and his family. While the Bible briefly mentions the sons of God taking human wives and producing giants in Genesis 6, it provides little detail about the consequences of these actions. The Book of Jubilees offers a more elaborate explanation, focusing on the fall of the Watchers and the catastrophic impact of their offspring. This narrative emphasizes the destructive influence of the Nephilim and the Watchers, showing how angelic rebellion contributed to the corruption of the earth. It also provides more background for the flood, portraying it as a necessary divine act to cleanse the world of the chaos created by the Watchers. Number 18, the Apocalypse of Moses is a Jewish and Christian apocryphal text that details the story of Adam's death, which is not elaborated upon in the Bible. This narrative offers a more emotional and mystical account of Adam's final moments and his reunion with God. In this text, Adam, now an old man, falls gravely ill. As he lies on his deathbed, surrounded by Eve and his children, he experiences a deep sorrow for the sin he committed in the Garden of Eden. Eve shares in this grief, recounting how she was deceived by Satan and expressing her regret for causing Adam's downfall. As Adam nears death, he sends his son Seth to paradise to ask for oil from the tree of life to heal him. However, Seth is told by an angel that Adam cannot be healed, as the time of his death has come. The angel explains that death is the result of Adam's disobedience, but that there will be redemption for humanity through the coming Messiah. When Adam dies, the archangel Michael comes to carry his soul to heaven, and the earth mourns his passing. This text presents Adam's death as a moment of great significance, filled with divine intervention and promises of future redemption. In the Bible, Adam's death is mentioned briefly, with no details about the circumstances or his state of mind. The Apocalypse of Moses provides a detailed and emotional account of Adam's death, highlighting the sorrow of his fall and the hope of eventual salvation. This narrative humanizes Adam, portraying him as a figure filled with regret and sorrow for his sin. It also connects Adam's death to the larger narrative of redemption, linking the fall of man with the promise of the Messiah. Number 19, the second Book of Enoch, also known as 2 Enoch, gives an expanded and supernatural account of Melchizedek's birth, significantly different from the mysterious figure briefly mentioned in the Bible. Melchizedek is born under extraordinary circumstances. His mother, Sophonim, dies during childbirth. But when Melchizedek is born, he emerges from his mother's body fully formed, clothed, and speaking. His face shines brightly, indicating that he is divinely chosen. The priest Ner, Melchizedek's uncle, is tasked with raising him, but an angel appears and tells Ner that Melchizedek must be hidden, for he is destined for a great role. The angel Michael takes Melchizedek to paradise, where he is preserved until the flood ends. Melchizedek is later revealed to be a priest appointed by God, untouched by the destruction of the flood, and preserved to continue God's divine order on earth. In the Bible, Melchizedek appears briefly in Genesis as a priest-king who blesses Abraham. There is no mention of his birth or his supernatural origins. 2 Enoch adds a miraculous element to Melchizedek's story, presenting him as divinely protected and predestined for a holy role. This narrative elevates Melchizedek to a figure of divine importance, positioning him as a special priest chosen by God before the flood. The supernatural birth and the intervention of angels place Melchizedek in a unique role within the broader religious context. Number 23. Baruch is an apocalyptic text that describes Baruch's vision of the end times and the fate of the world. While Baruch is mentioned in the Bible as a scribe of the prophet Jeremiah, this text gives him a more prominent prophetic role. Baruch is taken on a journey through the heavens by an angel where he is shown a series of disturbing visions. These include the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem and the suffering of the Jewish people. Baruch also sees the underworld, where he witnesses the punishment of the wicked. In a vivid image, Baruch is shown a great abyss filled with souls in torment, suffering for their sins. The angel explains to Baruch that these events are the result of humanity's disobedience and failure to follow God's commandments. However, Baruch is also given a message of hope. He is told that the righteous will be saved and that there will be a final judgment in which justice will be served. While Baruch appears in the Bible as a scribe and follower of Jeremiah, there is no mention of him receiving visions of the end times. 3. Baruch expands on his role, giving him apocalyptic insights that are more commonly associated with other prophets like Daniel or John. This narrative emphasizes themes of judgment and redemption, portraying Baruch as a prophet who is granted divine insight into the fate of the world. His journey through the heavens and the underworld adds a cosmic dimension to his character, linking him to broader apocalyptic traditions. Number 21, the Apocalypse of Zephaniah, is an early Christian apocalyptic text that describes the fate of the soul after death. This narrative provides a detailed vision of the afterlife, including the judgment of the dead, which is not present in the canonical Bible. In this version, Zephaniah is taken by an angel on a journey through the heavenly realms where he sees the souls of the dead being judged. The righteous are welcomed into paradise, while the wicked are cast into a fiery abyss. Zephaniah witnesses the souls of the damned being tormented by demons who are described as grotesque, with faces like animals and eyes of fire. The text also describes the weighing of the souls, where each person's deeds are measured on a cosmic scale. Those whose good deeds outweigh their sins are allowed into heaven, while the rest are condemned. Zephaniah's vision ends with a promise of hope for the righteous, who will live in eternal peace. In the Bible, Zephaniah is a prophet who warns of God's judgment on Judah, but does not receive visions of the afterlife or the fate of souls. The Apocalypse of Zephaniah introduces detailed eschatological themes, providing a more vivid and explicit vision of heaven, hell, and the judgment of souls. This text adds a new dimension to Zephaniah's role, presenting him as a prophet who gains insight into the afterlife. The description of the judgment of souls and the imagery of demons and cosmic scales contribute to the development of early Christian views on heaven, hell, and the final judgment.
The Apocalypse of Adam, discovered in the Nag Hammadi library, is a pivotal Gnostic text that provides an alternative interpretation of the biblical creation story, revealing hidden layers of meaning from a Gnostic perspective. Written in Coptic and dating back to the 1st or 2nd century AD, the text presents a revelation from Adam to his son Seth, offering a profound retelling of creation, the fall of humanity, and the coming of a savior. It is a rich, symbolic text that diverges from traditional Christian narratives, presenting a universe shaped by competing divine forces and a world that is entrapped by an evil creator. The Apocalypse of Adam is framed as a secret revelation that Adam, the first man, passes on to his son Seth. Adam, nearing the end of his life, reflects on his experiences and reveals a hidden truth about the nature of the world and the beings that rule over it. He explains that the story of creation, as told by the ruling powers of the world, is a lie meant to keep humanity in ignorance. The text itself is structured into multiple sections. It begins with Adam's retelling of his and Eve's origin and their fall, moves on to discuss the various kingdoms that rule over the world, and ends with a prophecy about the coming of a savior who will liberate humanity from the dominion of these powers.
Seth, my son, listen closely. The story you know is not the true story. We were not created by the God of this world, but by a higher divine power. Our origin and fall have been twisted to keep us in darkness.
Father, what do you mean? How can this be true?
Adam's revelation sets the stage for a deeper understanding of the text, challenging the traditional narratives. The first part of the text presents a revisionist version of the Genesis story. Adam tells Seth that he and Eve were not created by the God of the Bible, but by a higher divine power, referred to in Gnostic theology as the true God or the invisible spirit.
Seth, we once dwelled in a higher spiritual realm, living in a state of pure knowledge and divine light. But our existence was disrupted by a lesser, malevolent deity.
This lesser deity, is it the one we call Yahweh?
Yes, the demiurge. He created the material world and deceived us into becoming trapped in physical bodies. He is ignorant of the higher spiritual realm and seeks to keep us in ignorance.
According to Adam, this demiurge is identified with the God of the Old Testament, who the Gnostics saw as a false god. Adam explains that he and Eve were cast into this material prison against their will, and their true spiritual nature was hidden from them by the rulers of this material world.
Our fall was not due to disobedience, but because of the demiurge's efforts to keep us ignorant of our true divine origin. The serpent in the Garden of Eden was actually a positive figure, trying to awaken us to our true selves. But Yahweh and his archons prevented this awakening, trapping humanity further in the material world.
This reinterpretation of the Genesis story challenges the traditional view and offers a new perspective on the nature of humanity's fall and the forces that seek to keep us in ignorance. After recounting his fall, Adam moves on to explain the existence of multiple heavenly realms or kingdoms, each ruled by a powerful archon. These archons are malevolent beings that control various aspects of the material world and work to keep humanity enslaved to their physical existence.
These archons are ignorant, jealous rulers who seek to dominate humanity and prevent us from gaining the gnosis that would lead to our liberation.
The Apocalypse of Adam provides a cosmological framework in which these archons preside over different kingdoms, each with its own set of rules and systems of control. These kingdoms represent both spiritual and physical realms that humanity must navigate. Each archon is linked to different forms of oppression and deception.
They keep us bound to the material world, and we are constantly being reincarnated within these kingdoms, each life a cycle of suffering under their dominion.
This cosmological view suggests that humanity is trapped in a cycle of reincarnation and suffering, with the archons working tirelessly to keep us from discovering our true divine nature. The Great Flood is also reinterpreted in the Apocalypse of Adam. Unlike the biblical version, where the flood is a punishment for human wickedness, the flood was an attempt by the archons to suppress human knowledge. The rulers, realizing that humanity was beginning to awaken to its divine origins, sent the flood to destroy the knowledge of the higher invisible God and keep humanity enslaved to ignorance. Despite the flood, knowledge or gnosis survives. This knowledge will continue to be passed down through a secret lineage, a line of righteous people who will preserve the truth about humanity's divine origin. This hidden knowledge will be safeguarded until the final salvation, when a savior will come to free humanity from the clutches of the archons. The final section of the text contains a prophecy about a future savior.
A great Redeemer will come, born from the divine realm, to free humanity from the material world and the rule of the archons. This Savior will reveal the truth about humanity's divine origins and the nature of the false god, the demiurge. The Savior will perform miracles and bring knowledge to humanity, enabling them to awaken from the deception of the material world. The Archons, realizing their power is in danger, will attempt to destroy this Savior, but they will ultimately fail. The Savior's message of gnosis will spread, leading to the liberation of souls who are trapped in the material realm.
This savior figure is a common theme in Gnostic thought, representing the divine emissary who comes from the higher spiritual realms to bring knowledge and salvation. In some interpretations, this savior is identified with Jesus Christ, though the Gnostic version of Christ differs from the traditional Christian understanding. For Gnostics, Christ is not a figure who dies for humanity's sins, but rather a divine being who brings spiritual knowledge that frees people from the material world. The Apocalypse of Adam concludes with a vision of the final liberation of humanity.
Those who receive the gnosis brought by the Savior will be freed from the cycle of reincarnation and escape the kingdoms of the Archons. They will ascend to the higher, invisible God and live in the realm of light, returning to the spiritual state that Eve and I originally inhabited before our fall. However, those who reject the knowledge will remain trapped in the material world, subject to the rule of the Archons and the cycle of suffering.
The end of the world is portrayed not as a physical apocalypse, but as the spiritual awakening of humanity, where those who embrace gnosis are saved, while others remain imprisoned in ignorance. The Apocalypse of Adam is a profound expression of Gnostic beliefs, offering an alternative view of the creation story, human history, and the role of salvation. It presents a dualistic universe in which the material world is a prison, created by a false god, Yahweh, and only through the gnosis of the true God can humanity find liberation. The text weaves together themes of divine rebellion, hidden knowledge, and the promise of a future savior who will bring humanity back to its original divine state. In this way, the Apocalypse of Adam reflects the core tenets of Gnosticism, the belief in a cosmic struggle between good and evil, the importance of secret knowledge, and the ultimate goal of spiritual liberation.